Welcome back. Good morning, everyone. We are here for our next main stage session here at the Responsive Nonprofit Summit. Now, human emotions, expectations, and experiences significantly impact how nonprofits utilize technology. I'm so excited to welcome Tim Lockey, the founder and CEO of the Human Stack, and he will teach you how you can evaluate how human emotions can be used to accelerate digital transformation. Tim, welcome to RNS.
Thank you. I want to introduce you to my family. This is my sister, my brother-in-law, and my niece. Last year, they went to Disneyland. And I said to my sister afterwards, "Hey, how was Disneyland?" And my sister said, "It was amazing." And she told me the story I'm about to tell you. But what is so incredible about humans is we can take an entire stretch of experiences and we can boil them down to one word: amazing. And when we do that, we access a whole bunch of things that are important for digital transformation. So in the next 45 minutes, I want to convert that word amazing into a word that you start thinking when you use technology. Here's what happened. They got there, and the usual thing. Parking was, parking. It's never fun. You got to do it. All right, they parked. Then when my sister was a kid, we all went to Disneyland together as a family. And she remembered this restaurant, right off the street. And she couldn't wait to go back and try it again because she had a good memory of it. And then they did Splash Mountain. And while they were waiting in line, she checked her watch and realized how much of the day was going to be spent just waiting in line. And she wasn't real happy about that. They did Splash Mountain and Pirates of the Caribbean and other rides, and they saved the best for last, which was the Millennium Falcon. And I got to tell you, when I went to Disneyland as a kid, it was like Dumbo and teacups, which I thought was cool. But they did not have Star Wars, so Disneyland has upped their game. It's incredible to me. It almost seems unfair. And they got to Millennium Falcon, and it was closed. And my niece was so disappointed because she'd been looking forward to it all day. They had hyped it up. They'd saved it to the end, and then they get there, and it was closed. She was really sad. And my niece, like me, puts her emotions out in the world and expects the world to pay attention to them. So she was real disappointed, audibly, verbally, visibly disappointed. And that's when it happened. A stormtrooper came running up and said, "You're V. Meridian, the rebel spy," to my niece. And my niece, this might have freaked out some kids. Nope, not Nicolina. She loved it. She was all in it. And she was drawn into the story as the characters because the stormtroopers actually did think, by the way, that she was the rebel spy, and I'll tell you why in a minute. And so another stormtrooper came over, and they're both talking to her, "Where's your paperwork, rebel spy, chain IDs, this and that." And these were not just, clone stormtroopers. These are pre-First Order conscript stormtroopers. And if you know what I mean by that, then I hope that you are looking forward to the Ahsoka episodes that are going to be coming out and seeing if we're going to meet Ezra Bridger again in the future. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, you're lucky to not be as obsessed with Star Wars as I am. And so they kind of went on their way after they finally decided that she was not the rebel spy, V. Meridian. But they kind of got intense about it. And they finally walked away. And it was the best thing that happened. It was the best thing. Because my niece left this galaxy and went to one far, far away. And she became part of that story. She became part of that world. And that is the power of belonging. She belonged to a different place. Well, as they were walking out, they walked by someone, and my sister, who's very smart, figured out what happened. See, they always have a ringer in the crowd, and they had told the stormtroopers that you're looking for a young black woman with blue hair and an orange shirt. And there are not that many people fitting that description, and my niece happened to fit that description, so they thought it was her. I mean, a big giveaway, by the way, is the Rebel logo on your jumpsuit, so there's that. And they saw the real V Meridian, and my niece ran up and told V Meridian what had happened, and V Meridian just went with it and leaned in so much, and it was all over again, another galaxy. She was there with her, and this time V Meridian made her a decoy rebel spy, which is like recess, queen of recess forever, because my niece was so cool from being a decoy rebel spy. That's just what happens when you start to feel that kind of belonging. And there's an amazing story here that needs to be told about what it's like for my niece to see someone that looks so much like her that she's mistaken for them in these stories. And there's an important story about representation. And I'm not going to tell that story today because there's another story about expectations that I do want to tell. For example, my sister didn't expect stormtroopers to run up to my niece, and my niece didn't expect to become a rebel spy. And you probably didn't expect me to start a story with Star Wars and Disneyland, and I didn't expect my friend Brian Komar to ruin my business with one slide on a slideshow in 2019. I'm going to introduce myself, and then I'll tell you about that story. My name is Tim Lockey. I am the CEO and janitor of the Human Stack. And I believe that we can create success as a service and see success modeled at scale in a way that we have not seen in this industry. And it's by starting at the other end of the market. Right now, we do digital transformation at the top end of the market. That's where it's the most expensive, so you need the most budget and the most time for it. I think we've got it wrong, though. I think that we can create functional CIOs in small nonprofits, and I think we can do it at such scale that we could create 1,200 functional CIOs in nonprofits without new tech, with existing staff, within 12 months. Maybe not 12 months starting from today, but within 12 months. And if we could do that, it would open up our imagination on what we could achieve with digital transformation. If you're interested in that, please find me. Find me on LinkedIn. Find me on my website, thehumanstack.com, sign up for my newsletter, and let me know I want to participate. But I've only done the Human Stack for a couple years, and the reason why is that in 2019, I was at an event, and my friend Brian Komar put this slide up. And it said 90% of organizations collect data, but only 5% use that data to make decisions. 90% collect data, only 5% use that data to make decisions. And it was a Jerry Maguire moment for me where my consulting practice, I saw it in a different light, and I understood what we are doing is harming the people we are trying to serve. And it's really hard to keep selling services when you don't believe in them anymore. And I just stopped believing in what we were doing. I could see this pattern over and over and over. Not only could I see this pattern, but I could see the enormous expense and waste that was going into creating these systems and then not using them. And it was not the technology. The thing that got me is that it wasn't the technology because they're collecting data. That part works. It's the consulting side. Us as consultants, we're not doing our job in converting that data to decisions by helping our clients do the work that they need to do. And so I stopped, I thought about this, I took 6 months, and I just focused on what would it look like if this was the goal. If the thing we were trying to do was create better decision-making through data, how would I do it? Would I do it the same way I'm doing it now? And the answer is no, I would not. I would not. So I created a new way of doing that. I didn't know what to call it, didn't know how to sell it, but I did know if we would do it, we could see better outcomes long-term. And I called it digital guidance, and I found a couple of clients that were willing to go in with me on it. And it's been amazing, the results that we've seen from them. That's what I mean when I say that this statistic changed or ruined my life. And I got to the market, and I was excited to tell everybody about it, and guess what? Nobody cared at all. In fact, some people were threatened by it. They were not interested, and I realized, oh, I need to start learning how to tell this story. And I finally realized until it can pass the mom test, until I can say it, and my mom understands what I'm talking about, I'm not there yet. And so for 2 years, I kept refining the language and trying different ways of talking about it, finding different metaphors, and I finally found one that worked, and it goes like this. Imagine that Salesforce, which is the app, or the software I was working for at the time, or Virtuous, or Microsoft, imagine they're like a car manufacturer. They make cars. And my old consulting firm was like a car dealership. And nonprofits would come and they would order a CRM car, and we would like talk with them about what they needed, and we'd like do donor advised lighting and soft credit tow package, right? We'd get all the trim, everything ordered, and we'd give them the keys, or we'd deliver it to their office, and either they wouldn't drive it after it got to their office, or they would wreck it because they didn't know how to drive. The issue was not that the car didn't work. The issue is that there is no driver's ed in tech services. We don't teach people how to drive. We don't have a methodology for it. That's what I tell my mom. And it started to stick. And so I just invite you to think about it this way. If you think about 90% of organizations collect data, that means 90% of organizations have cars, right? But only 5% of organizations know how to drive, which means using that data to make decisions. We have a massive driver problem in the sector when it comes to digital. And it is not the technology. And technology companies know this, and they don't know what to say about it. And so we need to start thinking about what does driver's ed look like and have a methodology for that, et cetera, et cetera. This is what I said to help my mom understand it. And the other thing I said is that, Mom, information systems are not all technology. When we talk about IT, if you say IT, that's tech, right? But if you say information systems, it's half humans and half technology, and that's a game changer right there, because then we're starting to talk about both sides of that equation, and we have to find solutions on that. And the more I went down this road, the more I realized the way we do digital transformation today, it's not producing the kind of results that we want. It's not doing it. And part of that is because what we mostly focus on is the tech stack today. And I did this for over 10 years, and I was good at it, and I liked it, actually. We'd start with fundraising, just like Gabe was talking about. We would create the silos that Gabe was talking about in the keynote. We'd create those silos for each department. So usually we'd go fundraising, then marketing, and then they would say, hey, we feel like we need to have a plan on this, so we would do some strategy work. And then they'd say, this is really overwhelming, and we'd do some change management work. And then they would say, we need something for our program team, and so we would do a program build. And then they'd say, we're worried about our admin getting hit by a bus, right? I don't know what it is with buses and tech people, but people are always worried about them getting hit. Or worried about our admin getting hit by a bus, so we want to do some automations. Now, that's a bad reason to do automations, by the way, because automations are really hard to track down, and if someone does get, a bus comes along for them, you don't know how those automations work, and that's a much worse problem. But this is what would happen, and this is what goes for digital transformation, because we have strategy and change management in the process. But the thing is that strategy was how to build on the tech stack, and that change management was how we changed the tech stack. It was all focused on the tech stack. And what I realized, and Mallory said it yesterday in her session, humans can't imagine, when humans don't have the mindset for something, they can't imagine it, they can't model it in their head, and they literally can't think about it. And what I realized is, the reason we're so good on the tech stack is because there is a tech stack. So I just created a human stack, and I named my business the Human Stack. And digital transformation then needs to be not one-dimensional, but two-dimensional. Three-dimensional if you start thinking about time, but I'm not going to go there. It needs to go up and to the right. We need some projects that are tech stack, and we need other projects that are human stack. And that's what really started to help me think through, this is what it looks like. This is a different model. And I could explain that to my mom, and she would nod her head. I think she understood. I really do. But I also didn't confirm because I didn't want to press. All right, so what happens when you're starting to work with humans is that a new factor enters in that you don't have to worry about with the tech stack, and that's emotions, right? the tech stack does not have emotions. It does not care about anything. It just does its job. It just calculates. It's a big calculator. It's an amazing calculator, but that's what it does. And so I started thinking about, how do emotions work? How is it that emotions work? And so I just want to walk through the Disneyland story with you one more time, and I want to talk about it as a way to think about the emotions. And so the first thing we're going to do is just draw a line, and anything above that line is going to be good emotions, and everything below that line is going to be bad emotions. And emotions are kind of bulky. They don't know like differentiation between slightly bad or whatever. Like, people just kind of feel like it's up or down. That's fine. I like that binary. All right, so when I said, hey, Kirsten, how was Disneyland? She said, it was amazing. That's that big blue plus sign at the end. That's the last thing that she says. She wraps a whole experience inside of that blue thing, and it's an emotion. She says it was amazing, and she's talking about an emotion. And what goes into that emotion? I used to think emotions were just the sum of all the things that happened to us, whether they were good or bad, and you just take an average, right? And so we'll just start with parking. So they went and they parked. Nobody likes parking, so it's sad. Then they went to this restaurant. And the restaurant was happy because it was food and memories and all of that. So it was smiley, right? And then they went and waited in line and realized how long it was going to be, and nobody likes waiting in line, so it's sad again. And then they went to Pirates of the Caribbean. And I just have to say, I don't understand how they made an entire movie franchise out of a short little ride like Pirates of the Caribbean, but whatever, they did it. So anyway, they went to Pirates of the Caribbean, Splash Mountain, all the rest. And then they thought they were going to go to Millennium Falcon, but it was closed, so they were sad because it was closed. And then Nicolina got mistaken for a rebel spy, and so that was really happy, way up at the top. And at the end, you average all that stuff out, and especially because of the rebel spy, you end up with an end emotion of amazing, happy, good emotion. Worked out, really happy, great day. But I started to think about something, which was, if my sister hadn't talked about the Millennium Falcon before they got there, they just decided to go to the Millennium Falcon. If they just decided to go, and it was closed, they would have gone to another thing and it wouldn't even show up on this. And that was really interesting to me, because what it means is that expectations factor into our emotions in a really strong way. So I don't think that this is the right math on it. I don't think it's complete enough. So I started to think, how does expectations work? What happens with expectations and our experiences? And this is my model for it. Now, if you follow Mallory Erickson's work, she will give you the brain chemistry, the anabolic energy, the catabolic energy, the way that the brain is working, and all. It's amazing. And if you're not following Mallory, please do. I learned so much from Mallory. But I'm from Montana, and I'm a simple guy, so you don't get anabolic stuff from me. You get Disneyland and emotions and little lines and smiley faces. And this is how I think that emotions work, though. Let's take parking. My brother-in-law hates parking. He was sure that they were going to have to park in lot ZZ, take 3 shuttles in. They would probably take half of the day just to get in, right? Okay, so he was really dreading the parking. But then when they rolled in, somebody was moving out in lot AA, right? So great, they got a parking spot right away, which means that the expectation was low and the experience was actually better than expected, right? And there's a gap there. So I think the way emotions work, and again, this is really simple. I think the way emotions work is that you add that gap to the experience. That's like extra credit for experience if it's better than you thought. So it's still not great. Nobody likes parking. It's not like it's the best thing that happened that day, but it also wasn't the worst thing. You see how that works? There's a gap there, and that gap gets added to it. All right, and let's take the next thing. When my sister went to this restaurant when she was a kid, so she really wanted to go back to this restaurant at Disneyland because she liked it as a kid. Now, as an adult, she's married an Italian chef. She's been to Italy, and she goes to really nice restaurants, and she knows good food. Her palate has matured. And so when they went to this restaurant, the expectation did not live up to the experience because it's Disneyland, right? It's not going to. And so it was still fine. It was okay. It was good. It was a good memory. The food was not great. And so, there's a gap there. Again, the gap between the expectations and the experience forms an emotion. So the emotion is that, all right, it wasn't quite as good as I would have thought it was going to be, right? And I think that this is a better way to think about how experience and emotions work together with expectations. And expectations are really important. Every parent knows this intuitively, by the way. You just know if you build up something and it doesn't happen, your kid is going to melt down. We all just know it. And then the last thing to say is that what is tempting to think of as fundraisers and technologists is tempting to think that people are going to remember their experiences. And they're not. That is not what people remember. What people remember is how they felt. So what people leave with is the emotions. So I've got these 3 different bubbles here, and the thing that you're left with is the emotions. And that's the missing piece. That's what's so important to understand, is that when we think about responsive fundraising, when we think about digital transformation, when we think about marketing, we need to focus on what the emotions that are created from that experience actually are. So I'm going to go through the rest of the day at Disneyland here. And we've already talked about the parking, right? We've talked about the parking and we've talked about the restaurant. So then they thought that the line wasn't going to be that big of a deal, and then it was actually a thing. And so the emotion remaining on staying in line was actually a little bit worse than expected. And Pirates of the Caribbean is WYSIWYG, right? What you see is what you get. So it's like you expected pirates and you got pirates, and there you go. It's like not that much to say. All right, here's where it gets interesting. They expected Millennium Falcon to be really high, right? The expectation was Millennium Falcon is going to be great. And then it was closed, and that creates a big drop, a big disappointment. And this is not to scale. I don't even know what the scale would be, but it's not to scale. And my point here, though, is that the bigger the difference between the expectation and the experience, the bigger the emotion that will result from it, either down or up, because when they weren't expecting, they were like, okay, this is going to be closed, and I feel bad about that. That's the expectation. And then suddenly the rebel spy thing happens, right? The emotion is really big. By the way, I love kids because their emotions are huge. They have huge swings. I think that's fun, so I like that about kids. And so then we end with this positive emotion and this word amazing because of that, right? Now, there's something called peak end theory. Peak end theory just says if you're going to feel and remember the things that are the top, the peaks that you have, and the last thing that happened. And my sister knows that intuitively. And the way I know that is that she didn't tell her daughter, but Millennium Falcon had reopened while they were talking. And my sister was wise enough to say, we're not going to Millennium Falcon because there's no way that the Millennium Falcon experience is going to be better than the Rebel Spy experience. And we want to end on a high note. Just parents know these things. So they ended on a high note, and it was great. All right, you've got to be asking yourselves, why are we talking about Disneyland so much? What does this got to do with technology and digital transformation and all the rest? Okay, here's where I'm going with it. If you've got going to Disneyland as the happiest place on earth, then the least happy place on earth is going to be a CRM implementation. Now, I recognize I am being hosted by a CRM company, so I want to be really clear about something here. I'm not saying the CRM is the least happy place on earth. I'm saying implementing it is. And it is really hard. In fact, the option set's not good or bad. The option is worse, bad, or worse. That's just kind of the way it is. I know what I'm talking about from experience because I have had people say to me, if we do another CRM implementation, I'm quitting my job. It is that hard for them. I know of people that went to counseling because of what happened in a CRM implementation. And while we're thinking about the car analogy, where we're thinking about, you buy a car and that's the tech stack, and you drive a car and that's the human stack, there's a high cost on accidents and it's not just the dollar amount of replacing the vehicle, is that people get hurt in accidents. And people are getting hurt in the way that we implement CRMs. They're experiencing trauma, they're experiencing a high degree of frustration and burnout, they're not performing well. A friend of mine started seeing a counselor for the first time because of a CRM implementation. She got called in for a couple of meetings and was still on the project 14 months later, right? It's not fair. It's not fair. And it is our job as consultants to start looking at this, and it's our job as nonprofits to be informed consumers when we're thinking about decisions like a CRM, and especially a CRM implementation. Why is it the least happy place on earth? I want to talk through what happens when we start to implement technology. And in case it's not obvious by now, I'm an economist, so I love graphs, and I like lines, and I like to draw meaning from them. So I just want to show, if we take a tech implementation, and you think about the quantity of technology implemented on one side, and the amount of time it's taking to do it on another side, like that's the graph that we've got right here. That big I is for implementation, okay? And what happens, and I saw this over and over and over because I did this with hundreds of clients for over a decade, I would meet with the executive leaders. We would be 25% through with the project, right? Timeline would be 25% done. And the amount of technology implemented would be about 10%, if that, right? And I could explain some of that on the curve, but it kept happening every single time, and it started to bother me that we couldn't predict it, so I started to notice patterns. And one of the biggest patterns that I found was that the executives would ask, why is this taking so long? Why are we going so slow? And then in the same client, the next meeting over would be with their team that's implementing and my team that is doing all the work in the day-to-day work of it. And they are not looking at this dotted line. They're looking at another line, and that line is called disruption. And it's invisible to executives that are not paying attention to their staff. I saw it over and over again. Here's what that looks like. You have a 40-hour-a-week job, and you're doing it, you're fundraising, you're working on programs, you're working on marketing, you're doing your job that's lined out on the job description, and then a tech implementation comes along, and they ask you to join a team, and it sounds fun, so you do it. And all of a sudden, you're now in to a couple of more meetings per week for a really long time. And here's the trick, if you're at the beginning meetings, you're in all of the meetings because you defined the project. So if you're at the beginning, you're going to be along for all the ride for it. And this disruption line happens, and it's a fair exchange. And I want to say this really clearly. It's a fair exchange in the sense that it's going to go up in order to go down. And the whole point of this technology is to decrease the amount of disruption and create more capacity. And to get there, you're going to have to consume a little bit of disruption. I think everybody kind of understands that. But they feel like this is going way too fast. The amount of disruption is not what they expected, and it's going too fast. And as we've talked about, when people's expectations are different than their reality, their experience, they have emotions from that. About 16 years ago, my daughter went on a trip with her grandmother, and everything went wrong. Everything went wrong. They were in the wrong airport, wrong plane, like just everything. And my daughter held it together all day long, traveling thousands of miles with everything going wrong. She held it together because she was promised chocolate ice cream. Said, when we get there, we're going to get chocolate ice cream. So they got there, and they got to the front of the line. They ordered chocolate ice cream, and the man said, we're out. And if you're a mother with any sense of empathy, you are feeling that moment where you know what's going to happen next. And it did. My daughter just lost it, totally lost it. And it was completely fair for her to lose it. From the outside, it just looked like she was a spoiled kid, right? Nobody could have seen what had happened in the rest of the day. But to my daughter, it was just one step too far. We know about this, and it's called change saturation. Humans can handle so much disruption, and then they can't handle anymore. And change saturation is when the disruption is greater than our capacity to handle that disruption. Listen, if someone's coming to you with a technology project, they are experiencing a high degree or a low degree of capacity. The whole point there is to create more capacity. That's what they want. And if we don't pay attention to change saturation in the amount of disruption that we're creating for them, and we blow past that level, they will have an emotional response. And it will not be a positive emotional response. So the plan on disruption is that it will go up and then it'll come down. But if you exceed that change saturation line, it goes up and it stays up. And when it stays up, there are very predictable outcomes. People resent the technology, they are frustrated with it, they're afraid of it, they don't want to use it. So when you're talking about adoption issues, I've never heard anybody talk about resentment as one of the key issues, but it is. And you know what they do instead? They turn to spreadsheets. And it's understandable why they turn to spreadsheets, because spreadsheets offer a high degree of autonomy. They give you control back. And what you've lost is a sense of control in your life, and you're finding it, and spreadsheets will help with that. If this disruption stays high after an implementation, it doesn't matter how much money you spent on it and how wonderful the technology is. People that are resentful of the technology won't use it. If they're afraid of it, they won't use it. If the disruption stays high, this is what non-successful CRM implementations look like. And it is about 70% of implementations. And it is not because the CRM doesn't work. It's not because the technology is not good. It is because of the way we introduce people to this technology. So when I was thinking about, well, could we do this a different way? I thought about this, and I looked at the expectation line on disruption, and I thought, what if we could get that below the disruption line? What if we could create ways of doing this that would drop the disruption? And the outcome of that is that in order to drop the disruption, it is about pacing, you will have to extend the timeline. And here's the secret, everybody already knows that's in technology, that timeline was always going to extend anyway. It was always going to extend. So you're actually not making a change. But even if it wasn't going to extend, even if it wasn't, you're now in a position to make a choice between your humans and your technology. Either finish it on time or help the humans that work for you. And we need to start looking at disruption as the opportunity cost of digital strategy that holds requirements and timelines so rigidly that they force a high amount of disruption. And the outcome, even if you don't care about the humans involved, which I'm sure you do, but even if you don't, the outcome is still worth it, because the outcome of a high disruption project is non-adoption. It's a failed implementation. It is not about project management, it is about disruption management. That is the key to doing this kind of work well. All right, so responsive. How do we respond to this? I want to say that we increase digital maturity. Okay? And what I mean by digital maturity, and I love the fact that Gabe was just talking about maturity and maturity models, because we need more of that. And this model, by the way, I talked with Gabe a couple of weeks ago in New Orleans about his model. I really like it. And what I really like about it is that the first two steps of his maturity model require digital maturity in order to work. So this has to get done, or you can't do the kind of non-siloing on teams that you're going to look at in a responsive model, a responsive maturity model. So before I dive into the maturity model, I found that this can be kind of triggering for some people. And so I just want to say, like, it's okay if you don't love the tech. And also, if hearing about this is hard for you and you don't want to keep hearing about it, it's totally fine. It might trigger trauma in some people. If you feel shame and anger and fear around your technology, that is understandable. It's okay. I'm a tech expert. I've traveled the world talking about technology, and I give you permission to feel the feels that you have about technology. It's fine. and it's actually a lot healthier to just identify those feelings. Some people didn't even know that they feel shame or anger or fear around their technology. Okay, let's just talk about what digital transformation, or what digital maturity is. On the tech stack, all you can do on a tech stack is do digital upgrading. You can just do better versions, better printers, better phones. It's just, all you can do is upgrade on the tech stack. On the human stack, all you can do is digital maturity. That's it. You just can do maturity on the tech stack. And we need both of these for digital transformation, like we've already talked about. And we need to know which thing is happening at which time. And by the way, you can do technology a lot faster than you can do humaning, right? So you can move the tech stack in weeks and months, but you have to move the human stack in quarters and years. There are 5 levels of digital maturity. They are resistance, reluctance, comfortable, engaged, and resilient. I'm always weirded out by comfortable. I feel like there's a different word for that. If anybody knows what it is, let me know. All right, these are the 5 levels right here. I happen to be resilient. That means I'm obsessive. I almost put that instead of resilient. Digital resistance, on the other end, is when you lean away from the tech, you avoid it, and you're intentional about avoiding it. Reluctance is when you lean away from the tech, and you don't mean to, you just lean away from the tech. Comfortable is when you don't think about the tech, you just do your job. Engaged is when you think about the tech and you like what it's doing and it's helping you do your job. And resilience is obsessiveness, where you can't stop thinking about the tech, and that's kind of how I am. And I want to give you, I can now not remember if it's 4 or 5, I think it's 4 tools to help with this, all right? The first one is a theory of change. You're going to memorize my theory of change in 1 minute, and it will take you 10 seconds per word because it is only 6 words long. And the first word is data. Until you have data that you trust, you cannot use your system to make better decisions. So you have to be able to trust your data. And if you don't, just like Gabe was talking about, you do data refining until you trust your data. Data turns into information. Information is like reports. These are not the same thing. Data and information are not the same thing. Data doesn't have any meaning associated with it. Information is contextual and has meaning. And insight is what you use when you make decisions. All right? Data, information, and insight. This is a chain that you need to have in place. And organizations that have high-functioning information systems, their executives make decisions from this pipeline instead of using just instinct. And their instinct is really good. The other 3 words are staff, directors, and executives. I am not saying that staff are not insightful or don't need information. What I'm saying is that there are more staff than anybody else, and so they do more to collect the data. Directors look at information to make sure that what's going on is supposed to be what's going on, so they look at information. Executives are expected to make decisions based on the information that they're receiving. This is the theory of change, and organizations that understand this will go much further because they understand what they're talking about. This is the equivalent of accounting. You know, if you know just more money in than out, you can handle almost anything in accounting because you have the main idea. This is the main idea of using digital information systems. All right, the second thing is belonging. Computers are built to compute. They think in digital, they think it is a 0 or 1, true, false. That's the binary. They're just calculators. Humans are built to relate. They ask questions, do I belong? Am I in or out? That's our question. Belonging is the base code of the human stack. When we work on the tech stack, we have to boil everything down to a yes-no operation. When we work on the human stack, we have to boil everything down to a you're more included as you use this technology. The big aha on that is that it means that Slack and Zoom and Teams, these are actually some of the most important tools for organizations when it comes to digital transformation and digital maturity, because they create belonging. I don't know if you've ever had the experience of someone who doesn't know how to turn the mute off on their microphone. And that's not always easy because sometimes you have a secondary device that's running the sound, right? And if you've got somebody that's in a loud coffee shop, about the 5th time they get told to mute themselves, they start feeling like they don't belong anymore. It's really amazing how sensitive humans are to do I belong. I showed up here yesterday. My first question is, do these people like me? I'm not embarrassed about that. I'm not embarrassed about it. That's the way we're designed. That's the way we run. We're all asking about this. We all feel a need to belong. The thing that's weird to me is not that we feel that way. The thing that's weird is that we don't see that digital transformation is about making people feel belonging through the digital tools, especially post-pandemic, because almost all of our culture is held now, half of our culture is hosted by digital tools. So our access to the culture, especially in our remote workforce, is digital. All right. The third thing is digital health. You can take this quiz in under 3 minutes. Go ahead and grab it. You can go to thehumanstack.com/quiz and take it. I spent a long time helping organizations figure out where they are and assessing them. And I can now take this quiz and have an organization take it. And in 4 hours, I could do what used to take me between 50 and 100 hours with a full team. That's how powerful this is. It will not feel that way when you take it. I promise it will not feel that way, but it is that valuable. What is helpful for you to know, though, is that there are 3 tech stack vitals and 3 human stack vitals. And everybody that I've talked to, when they come to me and start talking about their technology, they start talking about solution fit. That's the tools that they use. That's the tech stack. Okay, it's a good question. We got to talk about it. But it leaves off 5 other things. I like this digital health model because it gives you 5 other areas to work on. And the last and most important digital health or digital maturity tool is food. Now, you're only going to probably remember the last thing I say, so I saved it for the end. Listen, if you can involve food, it's probably going to help digital maturity. If you can feed people and you're in an environment where people are getting fed, they're probably going to be in an environment where they're learning. Every mom knows this. If you want to create a strong family, have a lot of meals together. Food gathers people. I don't know why it works. I'm not even spending time why it works, and you can see how much time I spend evaluating things. I just know this is the cheat code of digital maturity. Find ways to use food. Here's an example. All right, let's say that you've got a team, and you can kind of guess at who your resistant people are. You're going to host a lunch. You're going to have food there. You're going to invite people. And you're not going to invite your resistant people. And you're not going to invite your resilient people. Are they going to feel like they don't belong? Yeah, a little bit. That's actually kind of okay right now. And what you want to do is invite your reluctant, your comfortable, and your engaged people, okay? And then you want to ask your engaged people during lunch, hey, how are you using the system? Just ask that. Throw the work that they do up on the screen and have them show people what's going on. And you know what's going to happen? You don't have the resistant people there saying why it doesn't work and naysaying about it and all that kind of stuff. So your reluctant people are in an environment where they can see how it could help their life be easier. And you don't have the resilient people over there like me talking about how we could hook up GPT to our coffee machines and doing all sorts of crazy stuff that is completely unnecessary but super interesting, right? You get these 3 people, you get some food, and you're going to see those reluctant people turn into comfortable people, and those comfortable people turn into engaged people. That's it. That's my pro tip. That's the fastest way to get there. Use food. All right, these are the 4 things. I am very close on my time, so I want to end by saying this. What my sister experienced at Disneyland looked like this. Looked like photos. And she loved that day because of what it meant for her daughter. But what my niece experienced felt like this. Felt like she was part of the story. Felt like she belonged. Felt like she was swinging a lightsaber at stormtroopers. Right? That sense of belonging is so powerful, so powerful. So in closing, I want to say, never underestimate the power of belonging. Thank you very much. I would love to hear from you what you experienced with technology, what your emotions are with technology, and you can grab that link right there. It'll take you to a Memory Fox link. Spend 30 seconds and tell me what you found helpful about this way of thinking about technology. Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Rock on. Thank you, Tim. Everyone, if you have questions, if you want to dive into a conversation with Tim, this is not the only time that we're going to see him today.
Please.
So at 12 p.m. PST, 3 p.m. EST, Tim is going to be joining us on the backstage, and we are opening up the floodgates for all your questions, topics that you want him to dive deeper on, ways that he can help you at your organization. So be sure to join that session if you want to connect one-on-one with Tim. We're excited to have you there on the backstage.
Would love to get your questions. Would love to hear from you. So please come.
Beautiful. We're going to take a quick 10-minute break, and then we'll hop into our next round of sessions. Thank you so much for attending the Responsive Nonprofit Summit. And Tim, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.